So back to this little gem. I have discovered it a while ago. It's been many years since I've been wearing this scent, not this particular bottle, but this scent in general. And I'll tell you why I love it so much. I love it so much for the same reasons that I love Burberry Weekend. It is uplifting and happy. If that's what you're missing in your life, look into getting fragrances that are just happy, bright, effervescent fragrances. This is one of them. It reminds me of crystal, but at the same time very liquid, quite natural. There's green there, there's lily of the valley, very clean lily of the valley. Hyacinth and peony are supporting that very innocent, fragile lily of the valley and giving it some body, giving it some dimension. White musk and sandalwood are base notes, and they ensure that the scent is at least somewhat grounded and the wear time is actually quite good. This is a sparkling brook that appears in the spring as the snow is melting. It's running through the meadow. Everything is just fresh and full of life. This is the first greenest, most gentle little leaves that appear from under the ground after the snow has melted. And it's really rather charming. I don't think that it will be much appreciated by someone who's into deeper, sultrier, more femme fatale sort of scents. Certainly this is none of that for sure. It is a spring-summer fragrance. I love wearing it in the spring, particularly just because of this hopeful cheerfulness that it exudes. The lily of the valley here is really the hero note, and it does remind me somewhat of one of the most iconic lily of the valley scents, which is Jessica McClintock, which I have owned in the past, and I'm so excited to order in the future. This will probably be a tag on to a fragrance order I'm going to make probably within the next couple of months. So I'll get my hands on Jessica McClintock. It is a cousin of Parfum d'été, not quite the same. Parfum d'été is a lot more gentle, a lot more sparkling, very youthful, whereas Jessica McClintock is a young bride. Perhaps Lily of the Valley sings that way there. If we're talking about textures, it is probably silk, very, very slick, very touchable, very, very fine weave. It's almost weightless. Luckily, both projection and wear time are actually moderate, which is not something that you expect from an aquatic floral sort of scent. So wears very well for this type of fragrance. Overall, really moderate longevity, moderate projection, very, very wearable. I think it will be hard to find someone who will hate this guy. So it does make it a fairly safe buy. There's something very innocent about Parfum d'été, and I am charmed every time I pull for it. So I'm very, very happy to be using it this year. Next on the roster is Erin Lilac Path. This guy has lived in my fragrance wardrobe for a while, and I actually pull for it a lot in spring. This is a fantastic spring scent, specifically triggers a lot of childhood memories for me, but I think for many people it would, because wherever there's lilac, you know that very distinguished, distinctive springtime ecstatic happiness smell when the lilacs come out, because it's a rather prominent scent, and it is pretty dense close to where the lilacs are growing. This guy was released in 2013, so it's been a little bit, but I do find that this scent is absolutely timeless, and it could have come out 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 50 years in the future. Because it's such a soliflor, such a linear, very clear snapshot of a memory kind of scent, it is absolutely not going to age at all. Interestingly, Arian is Arian Lauder, a creator of a lifestyle brand. Let's be honest, it's an offshoot of Estee Lauder company. I believe she's a granddaughter of Estee Lauder. Anyway, makeup and perfume royalty, obviously, doesn't necessarily make her have good taste in perfumery. However, if she was at all involved in selection, after a nose had worked on some of the scents that are in her line, I think this is great actually. So good job, Erin. You're not just a fancy name. This little guy really defies expectations when it comes to construction. So usually, obviously, classically, we have a Perfume Pyramid with prominent top notes, supporting middle notes, and grounding base notes. Here, we don't really have that. Actually, I'm not even sure how this fragrance is grounded. However, I suspect that it's probably not necessary for this particular scent because it's pretty much pure lilacs. That's what you're getting out of it. There are some supporting white florals which flesh out the scent. They don't allow it to become anemic and boring. There's a lovely little accent of galbanum, which is very sophisticated. It adds that elevated, more classic sensation to the fragrance and supports it a bit. But lilacs are obviously king over here, and that is what we want out of a lilac path perfume. Obviously, you probably realize that I enjoy packaging very, very much. It's quite minimal, but beautiful, with asymmetric imitation of marble or some kind of a stone. It's all very pretty and at the same time quite creative and very tasteful. So good job on the packaging. The packaging is bomb. The bottle does feel weighty, substantial, and expensive. In terms of where we have moderate longevity, moderate sillage, kind of where most florals are sitting when it comes to wear time and projection. I don't find it offensive in any way. Again, because it's such a natural smell, it's highly unlikely that it will be repulsive to someone, because this is really not a question of taste so much. It's just this smells like lilacs, and there are not a lot of people out there who think lilacs smell gross. I think very much a worthwhile try for someone who is into florals and into authentic smelling, realistic flowers. Lilac Path certainly scratches my itch for that uplifting childhood memory, transport me into my backyard growing up sort of situation. I do find that French Lilac from Pacifica is close. I find that if you want to err on the budget side of things, French Lilac from Pacifica is a good choice. This is probably a little bit more sophisticated. However, lilac is lilac, and if you're doing a very natural smelling lilac, Lilac Path does smell a little bit more delicate. It smells refined, it smells elevated, and is a very thoughtfully constructed piece. I really can't describe the person who might wear it in my mind. Obviously, this is all very subjective. Because this is such a solid floor, I really immediately get images of the flowers. So it doesn't evoke any kind of connection to people. It just evokes connection to memories. Some memory is going to be triggered if you are into lilacs. Here's a lovely pick that is almost sure to be beloved by all. This particular bottle is Enthusias from Prada, and this is the Absolu version, not the original. Original is crisper, a little greener, a little more defined. This guy is a cozy iris. Now, it is rather difficult to imagine an iris scent full of coziness, but possible apparently thanks to Prada and thanks to the perfumer Daniel Andrier. This lovely fragrance was released in 2012. There's a little bit of magic here because there is a makeup-y quality to it for sure, because anytime you spot an iris, usually it kind of ends up a little powdery, but the quality of powder is obviously what we're talking about here. So slightly powdery but lightweight, just a little dusting, quite gentle. And here the delicacy of iris is really evoking a feeling of violets being present in the scent. And as I'm smelling the iris here, it basically comes across equivalent to a violet scent. And what a lovely violet scent it is. It does have undertones that do remind me of the meteorites from Guerlain, which is a huge compliment on my end because this is one of my favorite scents ever to have existed. I have another one that is a little bit closer, but this is pretty close. It's pretty close and really is a lovely, refined, elevated vanillic powder. The shading of mastic here is absolutely brilliant. It's not a note that you come across very often, but it certainly creates a magical little touch of support here. And like I said, it's kind of like shading. If you do charcoal or pencil drawing, you shade in certain ways and directions to create dimension and shape. That's what Mastic is doing here. The base is rather rounded and fleshy with benzoin, with vanilla and tonka bean. There is a bit of soft musk that does lift it a little bit, but mostly it's really that softness and sweetness in the base there. It would have been way too sweet if the iris didn't cut through it just a little bit. And the scent comes across as rather full-bodied. For me, this is the kind of perfume I would pull for in the very beginning of the spring, when you still have some frosty nights and everything is not yet actively coming alive, but you're in anticipation of that happening. That's when I pull for my product, because it's as it fits that sort of sensation for me quite perfectly. There is a fuzziness and softness to it, so this is not quite crystal-like spring high-pitched scent. This is a little bit more baritone. It's a little softer. It's a pretty long-lasting fragrance, staying around 10 hours or so on me. Moderate projection. If you don't apply a lot, it can be quite lightweight and light projecting, so it would be appropriate for pretty much any occasion. And I would certainly recommend this as a signature fragrance if that sounds like what you're looking for, really. Very versatile, easy to use, likable, Marilyn Monroe kind of scent. I would imagine that maybe a starlet from the 50s would enjoy this style of perfumery, but certainly it doesn't scream vintage. This is kind of timeless for me as well, which is hard to find. Which is a big compliment again for the perfume, as it always appears current. The base of the Absolu is quite similar to Product Candy, if you know that kind of a sweet base. It is echoed in Infusion, but in Candy, that sweet base does get sticky. Here, not so much. You won't find a lot of stickiness here, which is great, because obviously that's not necessarily what you want for an uplifting, hopeful fragrance. Remember, here we're trying to evoke hope. At least that is what I'm trying to do with this particular selection. I do imagine an Italian woman with big sunglasses, with light clothing that is quite structured, but has very soft, luscious fabrics, streamline, elegant simplicity, but there's a little bit of coziness. Maybe there's an Angora scarf, maybe there's a cashmere coat. There is something that is extremely soft and cozy that's present here as a pretty significant accent. A brilliant pick. I do also love the original Eau de Parfum, and I will certainly be repurchasing that one in the future. Right now, I'm quite happy to be pulling for my Absolu. It is absolutely wonderful. Then we have to stop, punctuate, and reframe. We have Chanel 19 here. Now, this is Queen. This is queen of all queens. I would say a cold queen. And slightly less hopeful, but more introspective and thoughtful. This is a bit of a loner fragrance. It is not inviting. It is not cozy. It is not come hither. It creates an atmosphere of thoughtfulness, stillness, analysis, logic, probably a rather introverted scent. It really is a great work scent for me. I tend to really be a lot in my head when I'm working, unless I'm working with patients, obviously, then you can't be. Sometimes you wish you were. But whenever I'm doing anything, including creative projects, that is all-consuming, that I am going to be in flow state for, just completely dissolving into the work that I'm doing. For me, this guy is helping me get there, helping me get into that flow, into that introspection, into that idea generation. It is not hang out with friends scent. It is not date night scent for me. I'm sure for someone out there it might be. And in general, a wearer may or may not come across as something that rhymes with kitsch, stitch, glitch. We're talking about a cool demeanor. This is an extremely unisex pick. I would say if you didn't know 19 and you just smelled it for the first time now in current climate, then in current perfume climate, you would probably find that this is a rather masculine scent. And it is, which is part of why I appreciate it so much. It is a very down to business. So men would wear this beautifully. Again, we're talking very elegant, very elevated, very aloof. Does that sound like you? I don't know. Aloof is exactly what I am when I don't want to be bothered. It sends a message. The scent was released in 1970. I believe Coco Chanel was maybe 87 years old or something like that. She has died since. It's named 19 because of August 19th being Coco Chanel's birthday. So this is a very personal fragrance to her, I'm sure. There's a lot of green freshness here. There's neroli, which creates peaks and valleys. There is iris supported by some milder, more gentle florals. And the base involves vetiver, woods, and moss. They do tout leather, I suppose, maybe, but really mossy woods is what I feel is propping up and supporting the scent. There is a certain purity to the fragrance, almost a virginal, untouchable sense of exclusivity. It's an object that needs to be touched with white gloves only. There is an air of confidence about Chanel 19 that is absolutely unpenetrable. The fragrance has moderate projection. It is fairly easy to wear if you do like that green mossiness. It can be quite wearable, but this is definitely not a fragrance for everyone. I would recommend testing before purchasing because this is not everybody's cup of tea. The good news for lovers of long wear, this is very long wearing. I mean, by the end of the day, it is still very present on the skin, on the clothes. It'll live forever and ever. It's rather distinguished and wears down into something a little bit more fluid and gentle than the initial application that can be considered harsh by some, especially if you aren't used to green perfumes in general. I would encourage you to try it anyway, just to know what it is that we're talking about when we're talking about 19, because this is a reference fragrance, really. I would encourage you to apply it and not scrub right away, even if you find it harsh and weird, but just stick with it and smell it in maybe 2 hours or so. You might change your mind. You might have a little bit of a different take on this wonderful creation. And finally, last but not least, is Chanel Chance ou Tendre. If you have been watching my channel, you know that this actually is a repurchase, and I've had it before and I polished off the entire bottle. This is a repurchase fairly recently, like within the last couple weeks. I ordered it and it arrived just in time for spring. It's a perfect spring pick. This particular one is a 2019 fragrance by Olivier Polget, and this is the Eau de Parfum. You may be familiar with the Eau de Toilette from the same line, but I'm really talking about specifically the Eau de Parfum, which is a bit more full and mature take on the original composition. It really preserves the spirit of that fragrance. You won't be missing out if you decide to replace your Eau de Toilette with the Eau de Parfum. Wear time obviously is much enhanced on the Eau de Parfum. Overall, I think it's a fuller, more complete picture of where this fragrance is going with its development. So interestingly, I do think I probably prefer the Eau de Parfum because the differences are not enough to make me miss the Eau de Toilette, and the wearability and longevity is just far superior with the Eau de Parfum. This is a pretty delicate fruity floral. It's not juvenile, but very, very youthful, which is obviously reflected in the gentle pink tint of the juice. It's a very nice little combination of fruit and florals supported by a very clean musk, which is a pretty standard way to anchor those kinds of notes. There's quince here, which is also present in the original. Hyacinth was much more prominent in the original. On the fruity side, we have the quince and the grapefruit. Grapefruit is a very uplifting, very youthful note that cuts through any kind of sweetness and just gives you that little pep in your step. And the florals here are very, very classical combination that Chanel uses all the time of rose and jasmine. Very, very classic rose jasmine, just in here, pretty clean, pretty pure, pretty well represented. I do think that Tendre Eau de Parfum is a little less tender than the Eau de Toilette. If you're looking for absolute weightlessness, Eau de Toilette is definitely the way to go. It does have some very delicate nuances. However, the Eau de Parfum does seem to preserve the essence of the fragrance fairly well, and you definitely realize that they're very, very closely related. They're maybe not identical, but they're fraternal twins. The musk gives the fragrance freshness and lift. It is a great pick for spring and summer. I think it's a very springtime perfume, but I think it's very wearable. So maybe if it's your kind of a perfume signature, you may like the Eau de Toilette for the summer. And the rest of the time, this is probably a little bit more substantial. Mostly because although this is a very lightweight, flouncy in a way, scent, it is well enough anchored and concentrated to be of moderate longevity. I wouldn't say this is long lasting, by no means, please. It's not, but it does have more substantial wear to it than does the Tendre Eau de Toilette. That one evaporates within a couple of hours, and in 3 hours or so, I found myself reapplying because it was just nowhere to be found. It was a phantom after a few hours. This guy holds on to you a little bit better. It sticks around for maybe 6 hours or so, so pretty decent work day, and it dries down into a very clean, slightly soapy skin scent, which is a lovely way to finish the day for a fragrance. I appreciate that. There are fresh red roses with green stems. There's fresh juicy fruit that hasn't been left out enough to become sweet and too mushy. There's a refreshing little sparkle of grapefruit. So the scent, despite the fact that it's an Eau de Parfum, does translate as effervescent and airy. Again, this is all things to all people. Kind of what I say about a lot of the Burberry fragrances. This is very wearable. Applied heavily, it can be an evening scent. With a moderate to light hand, you really get a fantastic, easy, very easy actually, daytime fragrance. There's still a sophisticated angle to it. Again, a great gift, very giftable perfume because very few people will hate it. I'm not sure who would hate it. Maybe people who hate florals. But it's a very likable, approachable, polite fragrance. There is a delicacy to it, and it's more of an ingenue sort of character. I'll have to think about which one I will be repurchasing, whether I'll be repurchasing the Eau de Toilette or Eau de Parfum. So far, I've really been enjoying the better longevity because honestly, who has time to reapply at work? So this is my little group of springtime hope-evoking, new beginnings kind of scents. Do you have a specific type of fragrance that you wear for the spring? What kind of a fragrance do you select? Is it a particular family? Is it a particular note that you're after? Is it a particular feeling or sensation? Or maybe you're someone who just wears one fragrance through the entire year. That's also a possibility. Leave your comments down below. I am interested to know, what do you consider a spring scent? Have you tried any of the ones that I have? This is very mainstream around here, so I'm sure that a lot of people have tried this whole batch of fragrances. They're not niche, they're very wearable, maybe apart from 19, which is an acquired taste, and very easy to use. I am going to try and use these scents to put me into a lightweight, dewy, hopeful, smiling kind of mood. What kind of fragrances evoke that sensation for you? I'm interested to know. Leave it down below. That's it for today. See you guys later. Have a great day. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones. And good luck to you. Let's continue creating hope in our own souls with whatever means, whether it be literature, friendships, or perfume, or all of the above. Get it all and fill yourself up with those positive feelings. Bye-bye.